Bun găsit, doamnelor și domnilor, o nouă ediție Vocea Libertății. Sunt Mihail Neamțu și avem astăzi un invitat cu totul special. E o perioadă intensă din punct de vedere electoral. România se pregătește pentru schimbarea președintelui țării noastre și pentru asta se pare că foarte mulți prieteni din America au venit la București. Am o plăcere deosebită să-l salut aici în studio și vom trece imediat în limba engleză pentru conversația noastră fundamentală pe prietenul Brian Brown, președintele Asociației Internaționale pentru Familie. Brian, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It was a short introduction in which I just told our friends that you are here with a purpose. You are here to support our friend George Simion. Is that right?
I am here for George. I love him, and I'm so excited that today we had the great results that he did, and I think everyone in America who's standing behind Trump is now realizing that we need to also stand behind George Simion.
Wonderful. You are based in Washington, D.C.?
Based in Washington, D.C.
Not far from the swamp?
Not far from the swamp.
But you're a good Catholic, a father of 9 children, wonderful, and also a lover of Mount Athos and Eastern Orthodoxy as well, and the arch enemy of George Soros. That's how I got to know you.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite title. I like being an enemy of George Soros because we have these World Congress of Families that we've done around the world.
In Georgia.
In Georgia, we had one with
Mexico.
Patriarch Ilya, Mexico. In Italy with Giorgia Meloni. That one was, I think,
fabulous,
every major newspaper tried to come after us with the same sort of thing that you see them trying to do against Mr. Simion. The same sort of extremists, far right, and they attempted to shut us down. But I will say that Giorgia Meloni and others refused, and so it went on, and it was a great event. So
people are still wondering in this country. Why is America so divided, and why is the West in general these days so divided? How can you explain the popularity of the ideas of George Soros in the Biden administration, in the Obama administration, which was so influential even in Eastern Europe many years ago?
Well, there's a whole group of people that don't respect the basic values that America was built upon. They reject God, they reject the family, they reject life. They have their own ideology, and this ideology is the sort of motivating force for their life. I mean, you wonder how George Soros commits $32 billion to all of these causes around the world that undermine faith, family, and life. That was the largest single donation that has ever been made philanthropically in the world, $32 billion. So that's what went to Open Society Foundation, and he's very clear. Again, the reality is that if you look at the beliefs of the average Americans, the average American believes in God, family, country, and George Soros has for a long time been against those things, wants people to be the same all around the world, consumers, not have their own respect for their church, their tradition, their history. And so for us, religion is a motivating force in life. For someone like George Soros, politics and power. And he's done a very good job at that. And I would say that there's an elite in the United States that have embraced these ideas. These ideas go all the way back to the French Revolution and before. I mean, ultimately, the rejection of God goes all the way back to the fall. It goes all the way back to the first rejection of Lucifer saying, non serviam, I will not serve. So this has always existed. There's always a fight between good and evil in the world, and evil usually wraps itself up in good, tries to be perceived as good. So you have Soros and others talking about freedom, about the open society. Well, look at the fruits of that. When they say open society, they try and throw Donald Trump in jail because they don't believe, because they reject his beliefs. They try and cancel elections. They undermine churches. They attack the family through the LGBT agenda. They attack life through the abortion agenda. So this is a basic division that I think is now deep in the West, and it comes from the false ideology coming out of the French Revolution, that if we just strip away everything that came from history, tradition, culture, family, if we just strip that all away, we're going to get to some new version of man that's going to create some sort of utopia on earth. And this was communism.
It was Robespierre, but also Karl Marx, and then eventually Vladimir Lenin. Now, of course, with a softened tone, with a soft tone and with a soft voice, Alex Soros wants to take up the mantle now from his father. Now, if I would speak like you in Romania, I would be immediately branded as a fascist because, as they would put it, I now undermine someone that is George Soros, who came here in the 90s and helped us helped us learn rather democracy. Mm-hmm. Of course, George Soros presented himself in the 90s here in Eastern Europe as an anti-communist, as someone who disliked authoritarianism, dictatorships, and even to this day, he is someone who presents his agenda as being anti-Putin, anti-Russia. How do you counter this argument?
Well, he did this not only here, but all over, in Hungary and Georgia, all over the Eastern world.
Republic of Moldova.
He presented himself as being for the open society. But you need to read Karl Popper and look at where his ideas come from. Again, just because you reject the communism doesn't mean that the next thing you embrace isn't bad. And his form of liberalism is a very bad thing. What he embraces around the world is, again, he's pretty open, a rejection of our history, of religion, of the family. He sees these things as an impediment to sort of the individual. The individual
to
wants
the global
free.
village. He wants to have a country, not a country, but a society in which there are no, of course, borders. He wants to have a technocratic managerial class, which is making decisions without asking the people whether they're happy or not. He has a vision which is not far from Davos.
Well, no, that's correct. But the reality is that once you get rid of all of the mediating institutions between the individual and the state, once you get rid of the family, once you get rid of the church, once
and
you
the
get
nation state.
rid of the nation state, then you don't have freedom. What you have is an elite up here controlling, and you have a consumer that's been deracinated, that's been removed from all of the things that limit the power of any power that is higher. So it's not just the state, it's a super state here above, a technocratic global elite that then have far more power and far more influence to determine the daily lives of all of us. So it's not true freedom. And again, I think Americans recognized this relatively early on, and so there's always been a pretty strong push against what Soros is doing. It's only gotten stronger, but even under the Clinton years, many of us conservatives in the United States were well aware that this was a bad move
Even
forward.
under Obama. I remember a documentary made by Glenn Beck, which was rather popular on Fox News, and I remember, there was a pushback. Now, I would also make a comment about this ideology of Soros. He wants to infiltrate the European Parliament, the Romanian Parliament. He wants to basically sever the natural relationship between the politician and his people. Mm-hmm. So George Simion seems to be the opposite of that. He claims that the only legitimacy that he can actually boast with is the legitimacy given to him, to George Simion, to any politician, to any president, the legitimacy coming from the people. So he's an anti-elitist candidate, and I was wondering, because you've been around and you spent some time with George Simion, how do you see him? How would you portray him for a Western audience? How do you find George Simion?
Well, ever since I first met George, I think over 9-10 months ago, I saw in him a true leader for Romania. I saw that there was something within him that he was willing to stand and fight. And I started talking to other Americans saying, this is like Donald Trump. This is someone who's not going to bow down to these elites. He's willing to speak up. And I think many Americans, because Romania is so far away and we're not dealing with this all the time, we're saying, Brian, you're crazy. Why are you keep talking about Romania? Why do you keep talking about this candidate? And why do you keep talking about once your an election was annulled? Why do you keep talking about how this is a horrible portent for the future of Europe? And I think that especially once J.D. Vance gave that speech at the Munich Security Conference, all of these American conservatives started to realize, oh, this is a big deal. That what they did in canceling the election, it could strike up a whole new group of Romanian voters to stand behind someone like George. So I think things have changed a lot now, where maybe 6 months ago, very few people knew what was going on in Romania. Now, since yesterday, even more people are going to know. And I think that there's a real enthusiasm, because what's starting to happen is that for a long time, conservatism in the United States was very focused on America, and we weren't paying that much attention as much as we should about what was going on with conservatism around the world.
Especially in Europe,
yeah.
I'd say.
And that was wrong. We should have done more, because the only way we're going to protect each of our national interests is to also work together with the leaders in other countries that are protecting their national interests. And we have a natural alliance that's emerging between people like Donald Trump and people like George Simion and Giorgia Meloni and others. Now, there will always be disagreements because
of personality issues.
But also because different countries have their own different national interests. And that's traditionally the area of international politics, because even if we agree on the basics, my country may have a different interest than yours, and then we negotiate, we compromise. Problem is that those normal areas of international relation have been superseded by the things that we cannot compromise on. This notion of this global technocratic elite who's undermining freedom in the name of freedom. So all of us now around the world that are conservative are facing the same enemy. So we have this natural alliance. And I think this is a great evolution of conservatism, where I do think from the French Revolution to the present, there was so much of a focus on our own nations, and then there was a focus on defeating communism, rightfully so. But when we were defeating communism, Americans were working in America to deal with the communists there. We had some good relations under Reagan with other nations against the communists, but we didn't really band together so much on the values that we all share, on the values of faith, on the values of respecting each of our traditions and cultures. And that, for an American, going around the world, like I was in, as you said, we did a World Congress of Families in Georgia, and I had the great blessing to spend time with Patriarch Ilya and to see how much damage has been done from the liberals. First, it was the communists, and clearly that created a devastation in Georgia. We're all against that. But what saddens me is that with the fall of the wall, you would have expected in the 90s that Americans would have worked together to create to have ordered freedom in these countries. But instead, what many did, they weren't people that had my values or your values. They came in and all they wanted was money, and all they wanted was to change the culture. So you had pornography coming into Georgia in a whole new way, attempts to attack Georgian views on the family with the LGBT movement coming in. And most Georgian, 88% are against this whole notion, but it was being pressed harder and harder
by
and harder.
the embassy, by the US embassy. And
Exactly.
this is shocking because we saw Hunter Biden coming to Bucharest to make money, to speak with former ambassadors. I won't give you names, but of course you can figure their names out. And then you saw, of course, politicians trying to exploit the resources which were still available. I'll be very candid with you. Lots of ambassadors became filthy rich after they left Romania. And we didn't see any promotion of the founding fathers. There was very little talk about foundational figures like Russell Kirk. We spoke about him yesterday, or even William F. Buckley. Nobody paid attention to the literature, which was conservative through and through. Now, things have changed. We realized with Elon Musk that USA got hijacked by the liberals. A lot of money from the American taxpayer went into the coffers of Soros foundations here in Eastern Europe. So Soros was smart enough to put his money, but also to attract public money. And we realized that basically lots of outlets, media outlets, were controlled by the leftists, with the help of, again, the Biden administration and previously of the Obama administration. What will change now that we have the second term of Mr. Trump? Steve Bannon didn't quite realize the alliance he wanted with Matteo Salvini. He wanted to build a network in Italy. You remember in 2017. Do you think with J.D. Vance something will happen for the better?
Well, I definitely do. I think it's already starting to happen. I mean, look,
in terms of networking.
But the reason I started at this point of talking about the 90s and a broader scope is because you have to understand that us normal Americans were not supporting this. But the other thing is that we weren't paying attention too much. So these ambassadors and these elites all around the world got away with selling a false vision of America. And that false vision of America did great damage because it wasn't just a false vision, there was a force behind it. So the blatant promotion of values that went against Romanian values, Georgian values, anywhere.
Hungarian values, Polish values, Croatian values.
Central and Eastern Europe was the eye of the storm on this because they saw that they could come in and change things or try to change things relatively quickly with the Soviet Union gone. That's what they.
So we saw ambassadors marching on a gay parade. Yeah. We didn't see ambassadors lighting a candle during the Easter Vigil.
Yeah. So that's what I've tried to do over the course of the last 10 years through the World Congress of Families. That's why we've had so much of a focus to show the world that not all Americans think this way. In fact, most of us don't. And I've been welcomed. I mean, in Georgia, there was a great pro-family event. There were about 50,000 people out there, and we stood against this whole LGBT agenda, and we won. So, and it was great because they were flying an American flag and a Georgian flag behind me, and I said, well, don't you think people are going to be upset? I said, Brian, people now realize there are Americans that are with us. So that, I think, has now move forward to a whole new level because J.D. Vance and others understand this. So the Americans that weren't paying attention, and this doesn't take away blame. We should have been paying attention. We should have stopped it. We should not have had our tax money forcing values that we don't support on your country. So I feel shame for that. Even though it wasn't me personally, it was my government doing it. I feel great shame for that, and we owe the world to push that back. I think J.D. Vance understands that, and that's why I think that when you talk about
and Marco Rubio too.
Marco Rubio too, I think understands that. Yes, I think J.D. though has been definitely Marco Rubio understands.
He's a good candidate.
He Marco Rubio and 15 years ago recorded a telephone message for us to support marriage as the union of a man and a woman in California. He's been vocal in supporting pro-life and pro-family causes, and I've worked closely when he was a senator.
He's
with
a father
staff.
of four, I'm told.
Yes.
So he's a good Catholic coming from a Cuban background?
He comes from a Cuban background, and
just like Ted Cruz from a Cuban background, but more of a Protestant.
Yeah, I will say the reason I will say that he's been before he was considered more of a neoconservative on some of the foreign policy issues, but I think he's been great as Secretary of State. And the people were worried that he would be more for intervention abroad. That's a separate issue, but it's a connected issue. So many of us conservatives for a long time have said all of this nation building, all of this going to other countries is just creating havoc around the world. Sure. So that's my opinion.
Your Jeffersonian approach. Jefferson was very, very reluctant to see money used for waging wars outside America.
Although he did eventually move forward with the Louisiana Purchase, which was one of the greatest expansions of American power. So that's a whole other question.
It was a purchase, not necessarily a war.
All right, but up until that point, he had said America should we should abide by the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't give us explicit power to do this, and he did it anyway.
Manifest destiny.
I am not actually a huge fan of Jefferson. He's a mixed figure, but ultimately Jefferson was one of the most sympathetic founders to the French Revolution.
Agreed.
He changed his mind later, but men like John Adams, Fisher Ames, people that you may not...
No, John Adams was more of a traditionalist. He corresponded with Thomas Jefferson.
Right, exactly.
And he was in favor of institutionalized religion, John Adams, rather than Jefferson.
Exactly. So the Federalists had this tradition of being very... worried about the ramifications of the French Revolution, also being very worried about our interventions around the world. George Washington repeatedly said that we should not get mixed up in these European politics. So it wasn't just Jefferson. Again, parties did exist, but not in the modern form. So when you talk about the Democratic Republicans and the Federalists, there were folks that had mixed up views, like Jefferson, who was great on defending the agrarian farmer against big capital or big money coming out of the city. Exactly. But Hamilton was all very good on other things like, or Hamilton and Adams, about respecting the ancient Constitution and that America had come out of a British culture, as Russell Kirk wrote in America's British Culture. So, we've gone backwards, but forwards as far as the specifics. The alliance that Bannon envisioned may not have happened in the exact way you just laid out, but it's happening in a new form. It's happening because Giorgia Meloni's victory in Italy propelled forward Fratelli d'Italia, and I think they're doing good work there. I think that we did have losses in Poland. The losses in Poland are really bad for us. The fact that Donald Tusk is in there, and it's not good. But I also think PiS will do well in the upcoming elections, and I think that George Simion winning brings new power to the fact that the Poland could move forward and become and move back to being a much more conservative country, and that could happen in other countries. So again, in all of this, it's never going to move forward perfectly. We have Pedro Sanchez in Spain trying to kick out the monks at the Valley of the Fallen. He has a ton of power. He's a socialist, but
a radical.
The more that we get people like George Simion winning, and I think Simion winning here will set a precedent and will put a lot of wind in the sails of other conservative candidates. It does not have to be a lot. Right now, there's a targeting by the EU, especially of Viktor Orban. And I realize that Romania and Hungary have their differences, but I will tell you that Viktor Orban has stood repeatedly against the powers that be in the EU to stand up for national sovereignty.
And he's also someone, Viktor Orban, who got involved in defending the rights of Syrian Christians when they got attacked by radical Muslims. And so he's a defender of religious freedom. Viktor Orban, just like again Thomas Jefferson, who was always in defense of religious freedom against the Anglican Church, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But listen, we have so much to cover. Brian, you are again, as the president of the International Organization for Family, very excited to be in Eastern Europe. What would you recommend George Simion if in 2 weeks from now he becomes the president of Romania? The first 3 things he should take care of.
Well, I got to tell you, I don't know that I'm willing to do that because I trust George to know his country better than I do. I'll tell you, America has for too long come into different places and tell every country what to do. I don't know all the specifics in Romania, but
demography, for instance, what would you tell? How would you recommend?
Well, this isn't just for any country right now. We're facing a demographic winter throughout the Western world. It's horrible. What's happening is devastating, and as Elon Musk has said, who's not necessarily religious, but this is the greatest crisis facing human civilization. You cannot exist as a civilization if you do not have babies, and if you're below 1.5, if you're below the 2, we're now down to 1.2. In some countries, 1.5. I think that what Viktor Orban and the Hungarians have done in putting 5% of their GDP behind family, that's something that needs to be considered. That's a serious effort to fight back against demographic decline. Romania should not just accept that every year there's going to be less and less people here, both through less babies and through people leaving the country. That's not acceptable. And the way to combat that, there are very real things the government can do. Reducing taxation on those who have larger families. Encouraging families to form through giving incentives to reducing the cost of an apartment, reducing the cost of a house. These things have all been laid out by the Orban government. And is
it working?
It is working. There has been an increase. Look, demographic decline, it takes a while to get going. This has been going since the 60s, and that's why we're starting to fall off a precipice. You're not going to fix it tomorrow, but we have seen increases in the birth rate in Hungary. We have seen increases in marriages in Hungary. Now, people will say, well, the last 2 years, there was a decline. They try and attack Orban on that. Well, that's because from the early policies that went back 8 to 10 years ago, it's taken time. And from that point, you moved up. You've had some slight declines, and I think you're going to go up. It's not going to be a direct trajectory, but what you want to see on a graph is an upward slope, and that's what we're seeing in Hungary. Look, no one has the complete answer to how to fix this. Modern civilization has not faced this sort of decline. So we don't know the perfect answer. What countries need to do is to do what they can see is working in other places, and then they also need to experiment. It's worth putting 5% into your GDP to still have a country 100 years from now. Because you will not have this is what people don't understand. At these rates, you will lose it. You will lose so many people that it'll be difficult to maintain a country. And this is what Elon Musk sees. This compounds over time. The declining rate compounds over time. You have less people. You have less women able to have babies. The decline continues to occur, and again, you fall off a precipice. So I think that those folks on the left who think, well, this is great, we don't have humans contaminating the earth anymore. They don't understand.
But this is evil.
This is absolutely evil to say it. Absolutely evil. But they're saying this. This is a
we
part
are polluters, consumers, and then polluters.
This is a part of the Green New Deal. This is a part about all of the attacks that we need to do radical things because of climate change.
But the dark scenario, I'm not Alex Jones, you can tell that.
Yeah.
But you know, some people would think that the dark scenario here is the following. So you have a diminishing population, white, heterosexual, Christian population diminishing over time. Then you will import people from outside Europe, especially from Africa and Asia. Mm-hmm. You will have a mix, a Tower of Babel of sorts. Mm-hmm. Then you will have a managerial class in Brussels, in Davos, in other places, which will make sure these people, the new, basically Europeans, because they will be new, maybe a mixed race, who knows. These people will still have like very low income, and then because they will be dependent on the state, on various freebies, as you call them, they will be kept content with what they have, with the little they have. They will have no aspiration. They will need no like entrepreneurial instincts to take care of their larger families, and then eventually you will end up with the image of the global village of George Soros. Is that a possibility? Could be this a scenario that some people have in mind?
Well, for me, coming from America, obviously we have many different ethnicities, races. People get married all the time from different ethnicities, races. That's not the issue. The issue,
the cultural issue, is there.
The issue is the culture. The issue is religion and culture. And there has to be a frank discussion, and I think that discussion has started, and I think Viktor Orban has done well in helping lead that discussion, that a country cannot accept. There is a level at which it cannot accept too many people who do not share the same values as the country. And that's why Orban has said zero illegal immigration, absolutely zero. And for legal immigration, you have to be very careful. And countries that are at a point of a lot of internal problems, this is the point at which you have to shut it down. America has gone way too far on this. It's not about us disrespecting our Latin American friends, brothers, and sisters. It's that they have their own countries. They need to be able to fix their own countries. That right now we're not able to accept anymore. Our social security, our services are in absolute decline.
Brian, there used to be a word, I'm sorry, maybe I'm too radical for you here, but I would be surprised if that would be the case, but I would use the word naturalization.
Yeah.
There used to be a word which was the word called naturalization, and you initially thought that you can accept a certain amount of people from other cultures and civilizations, but you need time to basically make them be part of the new culture, to learn the language, to learn not just the language but the mores, what you call them,
like the norms.
The norms. I mean, I think it was Edmund Burke who said the norms, the mores are more important than the laws. Right. So if you don't have that time to accommodate, to enculturate, or to acculturate the new population, you'll have a Tower of Babel, right?
Well, that's already happened. I mean, that's why Biden was so destructive to America, because he allowed both Biden and Obama. We had all of these illegal immigrants coming in. First of all, it breeds disrespect for the law, because we treated it as no big deal. You just come into the country. You're not going to be kicked out. You're not going to have any problems. And my dear friends, like for example, I have a very dear friend from France who waited in line to become an American. He's now wearing cowboy boots, loves the American flag, understands what we're about, not just in the small things, but in the big things,
the narrative,
everything. And he waited in line. He had to learn about the country. He had to do all the things necessary. It's simply unfair. But again, in addition to the unfairness, it creates a totally different type of country. And it's not right. And again, it's also not right to the people that are coming in. Because in Latin America, in Mexico, in Venezuela, in all of the people need to work to fix their own nations. Now, again, for issues where people have to come because they're actually being attacked by the government, we're a generous people. We're not against that. But it's limited. We're not talking about 10, 20 million people. We can't do that. So I think that this connected with radical Islam, Europe is now waking up and saying, okay, this can't go on any longer. And some countries are going to keep going in the direction they're going. I spent 2 years in England. I studied in England. I love it. I don't know, I got to be honest with you, I don't know that there's a path for England to be saved right now. I honestly don't.
It's very hard to make the case. And I will say the following thing, because people tell me, but the history of Europe is a history of perpetual migration, people coming, the Visigoths, people coming, even some Hungarians would say that, their roots are, in Asia. And there's no question about that. It's true. They came to Europe, but what did they find? They found a Christian civilization. Their leaders accepted to be baptized, like the Bulgars in the 9th century. The Russians got baptized with Vladimir, but not Putin, the other Vladimir, the more important Vladimir. 1988, I think he got baptized, the famous leader who sent his emissaries to Constantinople, who fell in love with the Byzantine liturgy and then decided to become Christian Orthodox. Now, when the new populations in 2021, so 2025, are coming to Europe, they don't find Christian leaders. Macron is not a Christian leader, right? And Mark Rutte is, of course, the leader of NATO, but he's not a Christian leader of NATO. The question is, what is the cultural matrix in which all these individuals could find their new identity? If we live in a vacuum, in a cultural vacuum, what will be the blending force of these new populations?
Well, I think for some people, they want the blending force to be multinational corporations that can sell to consumerism.
Football.
Yes, but I don't want that, and you don't want that. And so, even if you're not a Christian, okay, you can not be a Christian, and you can understand the Christian roots of Europe and understand that they must be respected. So, if you become, if say someone who's non-Christian becomes the leader of France or Italy or anywhere else, you could conceive of them saying, okay, well, this is Europe. Europe is Christian. The roots of Europe are Christian. We'll have other folks can be here, but they must respect our traditions, our law, our order. That's not happening. So when you say Macron is a perfect example of that he not only doesn't respect the Christian roots of Europe, he has absolute disrespect for it. He's disrespecting the Catholics in many ways.
Even Notre Dame Cathedral doesn't look the way we wanted it to look.
Well, I mean,
after the restoration.
I mean, I was there. I thought from the outside it looked pretty good, but
yeah, inside it could be better. But still, I'm coming back to your point again. These leaders again. So Queen Victoria was the leader of the British monarchy and of the British Empire. I saw a picture in the British Museum. There was an African leader, maybe a Zulu leader or something, And when he met Queen Victoria, he received the Bible
Right.
as a gift.
Right.
Would you ever see in the next 10 years or so in Europe, could you ever imagine a situation in which an African leader comes to Brussels and he receives as a gift the Bible?
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
Why can't we print Bibles and send them, into the third world like it used to happen in the 19th century? Why is it so wrong to produce movies which are Christian movies and then distribute them along?
Well, I think we are doing that. I think right now, though, to be honest, there's a higher likelihood of Africans coming to us and bringing Bibles than us doing the reverse.
Thank you. So we need to visit.
No. I mean, honestly, that's the beauty of it. I mean, all of us at some point, both because America is deeply connected to Europe. It's a European culture in many ways, and we're not totally divided. So when I say all of us, we're Christianized in some way. Again, we have divisions, but all of us shared this. At some point, our ancestors were not Christian, and they became Christian. So it's not as though it's only imperialism that did this. Our ancestors came to realize the beauty and the power of Christianity, and they converted. Now, Africa has had this experience. It's now coming and it has the potential to be reconverting other places around the world. Because when I go to Nigeria, or even I was in Malawi, we had an event in Malawi, the Christian faith is deeply, deeply respected. And what we're seeing in places that aren't Christian is a frontal confrontation between radical Islam, for example, in Nigeria, and Christianity. And the Christians are trying to stand strong, and we up here in Europe aren't realizing that people are being beheaded. I mean, they are going after priests, nuns, and it's a horrible situation. So
the same in Kurdistan, in Iraq. I saw bishops who basically lost their priests because they were beheaded by ISIS or Daesh. So in the East, and of course in Africa, in order to be a Christian, you have to put in a fight.
Right, you have to
put up a fight.
And we have to be doing the same thing here. Here it's more of a soft power, but that soft power can be quite strong, right? Most of us aren't going to die for our faith, but so many people are so concerned about what may be said about them on Facebook, or in some cases whether they may lose their job. There is I'm not saying there's not real discrimination, but what we're seeing in Nigeria is simply saying that you're a Christian, you're going to be beheaded. We have something to learn from each other. And right now, the weakness in Europe is, and I say Europe because I believe in America, for all of our problems, there's still a public Christianity. There's still a willingness to publicly pray. Nothing seems odd to me to go into a restaurant and see people bless themselves. That's just normal. And people aren't scared of it. But because of laïcité, because of all of these other movements that came out of the
Frankfurt
came
School.
out of the Frankfurt School, and before that, the French Revolution. There is an absolute fear of publicly being Christian. This has to be stopped in Europe, and I think this is all connected. It's connected because this weakness is what allowed us to get to a point in the first place where no one could say radical Islam is wrong. We have to keep it out. No one could say we have too many immigrants. No one could say any of this. And what, again, Viktor Orban has done is to have the guts to say this right in the face of all of Europe. And I'm hopeful that other leaders will emerge that will do the same.
Well, I know we have very little time left, but I would like to ask you two questions. One is related to the future ambassador of the United States to Romania, to Bucharest. Do you think there's any chance we will have a different figure, a different type of diplomat, someone who would both respect Romanian culture, including Eastern Christianity, and at the same time promote traditional America?
I think that there's a good chance that will occur. I'm not going to get into the reasons why, but I think that the Trump administration clearly understands that the way our State Department was operating before, even under the first term of Trump, had to be changed. And I think it's important for Romanians to understand that the way that our ambassadors the history of the way ambassadors are appointed in the United States. The modern history is that typically 2/3 would be civil servants and 1/3 would be what are called political appointees. So that means that these civil servants have gone through training in civil service school at a very high level. But the problem is that the civil service school itself over the course of the last 30 years was co-opted by the deep state. And so what Trump did was unprecedented, which is I'm not going to obey the tradition. Because if you keep this tradition of 2/3 civil service, you're going to keep getting civil servants out of this deep state. Now, I'm not saying all of them are bad. Many are good, but the majority. So what he's done is basically say, I don't care. And he's just gone and appointed many what are called political nominees that don't have civil service training. I got to be honest with you. I don't think that our civil service trained ambassadors have been doing a good job.
In Europe.
In Europe or anywhere else. Why? Because they have not. Typically, they have their own agenda, and they're following an agenda that they had prior. So if they were serving under Obama or serving under a Biden, you can be pretty sure that they're not going to do what Trump asks. He's, for the first round, because the first 30, he's cleaned house. Okay, and a lot of these are new. These are people that have not gone through the civil service. They're people who are very accomplished in their own areas of life, business, and I think that's what we need to do at this
business,
point.
academia, or
of course,
anything else. Yeah.
And I think that you're going to see big changes because of this. And as far as him saying no more rainbow flag flying on our embassies, no more LGBT pride parades, this is beautiful. This is what we had begged and fought for years. He did it very quickly. And I think that is a sign to all of these other ambassadors. You need to do what Donald Trump says to do. You are not a freelancer that's able to go in and get away with anything. And honestly, that's what happened because they're so far removed. And a president of the United States can't be seeing every single thing that an ambassador is doing all around the world. They got away with so many things. Now, I'm talking about the first Trump term, and I think Trump realizes that. And that's why, he is a man on a mission. We have never seen a first 100 days in history like this. Everything has been turned upside down. Of course, some people aren't going to like that at all, but that's exactly what we needed, and he is doing it. And that's why I have such respect for him. And I think that a lot of this has to do with what he experienced, being the assassination attempts to throw him in jail. All of this hardened him to when he came in, he was going to do what was necessary, not what everyone liked.
Even Radio Free Europe and the Voice of America, I think these two institutions have been used by the deep state to promote a certain type of ideology. We have like leftist progressives taking care of these institutions right now as we speak while Mr. Trump is in power. The last question would be, of course, you are a Catholic. Who would be, for you, the best choice for a future pope?
I'm not going to get into all of this questions.
But your like favorite candidate.
Who do I respect very deeply as cardinals right now? Because I am a lay Catholic. I have no say in who the next pope is, and I don't want to pontificate because the only people that know are the cardinals. And so, look, but as far as who I deeply respect Cardinal Burke. Cardinal Raymond Burke is a cardinal from America that has been very strong on life and family from St. Louis. Cardinal Mueller was the former prefect for the Congregation of the Doctrine of Faith in the Catholic Church. This is the highest doctrinal body. He's very well educated, and I happen to be a friend of Cardinal Mueller's and have helped him come to America on tours. Also, some other names not as perhaps well known, at least in the United States. Cardinal Erdo of Hungary is very strong.
An erudite, right?
Very smart. Cardinal
he speaks
Erdo.
7 languages.
7 languages.
We would support that.
He's
because
great.
He is an anti-communist through and through.
Exactly.
And a very learned man.
And finally, I was just in Jerusalem a few months ago, and I had the great blessing to meet Cardinal Pizzaballa. Cardinal Pizzaballa is the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem. He has very close relationships with the Orthodox Church, obviously in Jerusalem, given the Holy Sepulchre and all of the holy sites, the different different, the Orthodox and Catholics are working closely together to protect and to have pilgrims come. He's also
ex-Oriental looks. We believe that the light comes from the east, not from Moscow, but from Jerusalem.
Yeah. So he is, and he's also just a deeply faithful man. And again, I did not spend a lot of time with him, but I was able to spend time with him. Same as when you talk about Erdo, speaks multiple languages, very smart. But most of all, right now, I think what the Catholic Church needs is someone who is quite clear on doctrine, that we need doctrinal clarity. We need love. We always have needed love. We need all of that. And Pope Francis had that, but there was also confusion. And that confusion has caused great damage. And I think clarity right now is important, because ultimately for us Catholics, the Pope is a shepherd, and a shepherd has to help steer the sheep in the right direction, and the right direction has to do with both what we believe and how we pray. So, both liturgy and doctrine, I think, are key. And of course, we want to be, open and bring converts in. But from my experience, and even my experience within Orthodoxy, the beauty of the liturgy, the beauty of the clarity of what the liturgy teaches, that is what brings people to the faith. Not watering it down, not changing it, not upsetting it. So at the times I've been at Mount Athos and I've seen, the divine
vigils,
the divine liturgy of Saint Basil or Saint John Chrysostom, the vigils, the constant prayers. You can't go there and remain unchanged. There's a beauty there. And, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, the constant prayer and getting in your mind, who we really are as human beings, what we owe to our Creator. That has to be quite clear. And so, again, I have deep respect for Orthodoxy. I have deep respect for how clear your pastors often are speaking, but also the liturgy itself is so beautiful. So I think we need those two things right now. I think many Catholics in America that have tried the best they can, we're all fallen, but we all sin, but trying the best they can. Sometimes, I have 9 children. There were some statements coming out of the Vatican at times that, you don't need to breed like rabbits or whatever else. That caused great damage to people who were trying to, for example, my wife.
You expect that from Macron, but not from a Pope.
No. Now, this is the problem. The Holy Father, Pope Francis, often spoke off the cuff. Right? He would be on an airplane, he would say, that is not normal for us. And I also think a return to regular order where we're not always just, you and I here in a podcast, we can speak off the cuff about anything. But it doesn't really work so well when you're the head of
1.2 billion
people. Yeah, we've got to be a little careful. That's my view. Again, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Well, you're hopeful?
I'm hopeful. I think that many cardinals and leaders in the church see that we need clarity and we need order. And so we'll see. I'm always hopeful. The church has lasted a long time. Things are going to work out.
Listen, Brian, I'm very grateful and very, very touched and moved by your very presence here.
Yeah.
And we have to say, in the 50s, our grandfathers told us the Americans will come. And finally you came with the right gospel, not with the false promises of an ideology, but with the gospel of Jesus Christ, the gospel of love, and the gospel of truth and beauty. And we are very grateful. Another friend of ours, common friend of ours, is Father Josiah. He has a book just behind you. And of course, we would like to see you and him at the next World Congress of Families, maybe to be held in Bucharest.
I'm looking forward to it. I think, I'll say right now, I think sometime in September, we're going to be doing something
under the auspices of the new president of Romania.
I'm praying, working and hoping.
Thank you. God bless
you so
you.
much.
Thank you so much. Doamnelor și domnilor, aceasta a fost discuția noastră cu un prieten adevărat al țării noastre, al bisericii noastre, al ortodoxiei, al valorilor creștine, Brian Brown, președintele Organizației Internaționale pentru Familii. Eu sunt Mihail Neamțu și nu uitați, construim împreună România deșteaptă. La revedere!